Hello everyone and welcome back to Halloween Horrorfest 3, Season of the List. This week we're going to be talking about the Cannibals category, but before we get into that we wanted to recap Subversion since we didn't post a video last week. We're sorry about that, we were busy. I don't have another explanation, we were just busy. So to quickly recap the movies that we watched last week, on October 8th we watched Beau is Afraid, directed by Ari Aster.
On October 9th, we watched Significant Other, directed by Robert Olson and Dan Burke.
On October 10th, we watched A Classic Horror Story, directed by Roberto De Feo and Paolo Strapoli.
On October 11th, we watched Funny Games, directed by Michael Haneke.
On October 12th, we watched Parasite, directed by Bong Joon-ho.
On October 13th, we watched Barbarian, directed by Zach Kreger.
And tonight, on October 14th, we will be watching Death Becomes Her as our palate cleanser, directed by Robert Zemeckis. So quickly, just to let you know what Subversion was, the point of this category was movies that subvert themselves. And so basically a movie that sets itself up to be one thing, suggests to you that something is going to happen, and then something completely different happens, or something unexpected happens partway through the movie, and it becomes kind of something different than what you were originally anticipating. So what was your favorite movie in the Subversion category, Josie?
So I think they're all good for different things. So if you're looking for a more straightforward horror movie, you might watch A Classic Horror Story or Barbarian, or maybe even Significant Other could fit into that. It's a little zanier at points, but and then if you want something that is more of a social commentary horror, you would want to go with something like Funny Games or Parasite, and then Beau is Afraid is on a different wavelength. So
yeah, Beau is Afraid is doing its own thing. Beau is Afraid, directed by Ari Aster, who recently has directed Hereditary and Midsommar. Beau is Afraid is actually the third in what Ari Aster calls a spiritual trilogy of movies, with Hereditary and Midsommar as kind of familial trauma and kind of developing family dynamics in horrific ways. I didn't even really view Beau is Afraid as a horror movie until Josie kind of convinced me that it was one, which I now accept, but I didn't think so at first. Do you have a favorite out of those?
I mean, I think right now, probably Parasite.
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious choice.
It's just a really great movie.
It's a fantastic movie. It won Best Picture. It's a great movie.
How about you?
I think, that's the best. Beau is Afraid, I think, is a pretty close second. Beau is Afraid was really good. We watched it earlier this year. I think of the more standard horror movie styles, I think Barbarian is really quite good and was a nice surprise from the last few years. So if you're looking for a more standard horror out of this list, I think Barbarian is a really good one that's gonna surprise you, but isn't going to be off the rails crazy like Beau is Afraid.
I don't know. It does get a little off the rails crazy, but not in a way that is dissonant with the horror genre.
Yeah, it still is a horror movie through and through. So to go on to next week and what we will be watching, we're going to tackle the Cannibals category. And Josie, why don't you tell us what we're watching first?
So on October 15th, we're watching Fresh, directed by Mimi Cave.
On October 16th, we're watching We Are What We Are by Jorge Michel Grau.
On October 17th, we're watching Dumplings, directed by Fruit Chan.
On October 18th, we're watching The Silence of the Lambs, directed by Jonathan Demme.
On October 19th, we're watching Ravenous, directed by Antonia Bird.
On October 20th, we're watching Raw, directed by Julia Ducournau.
And on October 21st, we're watching The Love Witch, directed by Anna Biller, as our palate cleanser.
Yeah, so I think it'll be an interesting category. Do you have a favorite from this week?
I think that Fresh might be my favorite of these. It's just like a really solid cannibal movie from more of a woman's perspective. And I think that...
A woman and potential victim of cannibalism. Not to be too spoilery,
well,
but...
think that it is just a really solid horror movie that a lot of different people can enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, just to build on Fresh a bit, it's not too scary, not too graphic.
No, it's not too graphic.
It's more suspenseful, and the implication of the situation is the horror. It's also a very well acted and well shot movie. It's a really good movie, and very worth watching. I think my favorite of this list, and I think we have to put The Silence of the Lambs to the side, because as with Parasite last week, The Silence of the Lambs also won the Academy Award for Best Picture. Yes. One of the only 2 horror movies to do so, along with Parasite. So I think we have to kind of put that one to the side as its own thing. It's a really good movie. But I'm actually going to pick Ravenous, directed by Antonia Bird, as my favorite for this week. That is a little movie from the 90s, which I call it little. I think it's a fair...
But it's low budget.
It's a lower budget movie. It did not get a huge widespread release. I don't think a lot of people know it exists or have ever heard of it. But it's a really, really cool take on cannibalism and American westward expansion. It's kind of a Western, but with horror elements. And we saw it on some lists online, had never heard of it, thought it was worth a try, and we both found it to be really good. It's a well acted, well shot, well written movie. The budget is a little low, but I don't think it really hurts it very much, if at all. It's still a really, really cool movie, and I think a really cool take on an idea that is pretty played out in cinema, but I think to approach it from the perspective of cannibalism is a pretty interesting take. So I really like that one, and I think if you get a chance, you should check it out. It's on Tubi, right?
I think so. It's also on Criterion this month.
Okay.
They're doing, I think, Cannibals, or they're doing like Western horror. I can't remember which category.
Well, if you happen to be a Criterion Selection subscriber, like we are, then you can use that to stream it. But if you're a normal person who doesn't have the Criterion streaming service, you can just watch it for free on Tubi, which is a little bit easier, I think. But definitely worth a watch. I think there are a couple other interesting things that we wanted to talk about with this category. One, I think, is the kind of proliferation of foreign films in this category. It's a very foreign film heavy category. We Are What We Are, Dumplings, and Raw are all foreign films.
And then I think Ravenous is directed by...
Yes, it's a foreign director. We were split on whether she is Australian or
we have to check.
a Kiwi, but one of those two. She's from the South Pacific, that's what I know.
Okay.
So I think that's an interesting... I don't really know what to read into that as an American.
Well, I think, and there's also, a lot of female directors on this list, women directors.
Many more than almost any other category. Well, definitely more than any other category we've ever done.
Yeah.
This may be, honestly, this category alone may have more women directors than any other month has had.
Oh, yeah.
It is pretty difficult, I think, to find female directors, especially before like 2015.
Yeah.
You're really going to be hard pressed to find women who are directing horror. But more recently, we have quite a few. 4 in this category.
And I think that you could read into that and say people have theories about women directing body horror films more so than other types of horror films for various reasons. But I think that this selection has more to do with our choices in the category, because there are plenty of cannibal films that are more exploitative that are directed by white men that we didn't include in this category.
Yeah.
So we went with things that had interesting things to say about cannibalism, and so I think that's reflected in the category as well.
Yeah. Yeah, these are not just kind of schlock cannibals for the sake of cannibals. Obviously, too, the cannibal subgenre of horror is full of a lot of very problematic films.
Yes.
a lot of not good takes on indigenous peoples, or going into a rainforest and something happening. It's not a traditionally very socially aware or acceptable category. But I think that the picks in this category that we have chosen are interesting takes, pretty modern, I think, and will make you think about. I mean, you're probably not going to become a cannibal after watching these, but they'll make you think a little bit. Yeah. They're not going to convince you to become a cannibal, but you might think twice. No. They will make you think about the implications of consumption and, your humanity and the humanity of others. I think are all key themes that run through these things. And, that's something to develop with cannibalism. I think it's a unique category. People eating people is a subject that has a lot of baggage, and I think these movies do a good job of unpacking it or applying it in interesting ways to teach you something else. Yeah. So we hope that you will enjoy our Cannibals subcategory. We hope that you enjoyed Subversion last week. Also, just a quick trigger and content warning. Obviously, the movies in this category feature people eating people. Some of them are significantly more graphic than others. Some of them involve different situations that might be more or less disturbing, depending on who is being eaten and in what format that's occurring. So if you are at all squeamish or hesitant, I highly encourage you to check Wikipedia for the movie that you're going to watch before you watch it.
Or IMDb for the parents' guides. Those get more specific.
Okay,
too.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So definitely take a look if you are at all hesitant. We did not hold back on the stuff that we picked for this. There is no content. We do not screen content out. There's no censorship going on from us. So you're going to have to make your own choices on that. So just be aware that this category, more so than many of the others on this list this year, is going to have some disturbing content. But with that, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week when we cover our fourth and final subcategory of the month, computers. And if you haven't suggested movies yet for the final 3 movies of the month, please do so using the Google Forms sheet that I have sent out via email, or I'll post a poll or something on Instagram. I don't really know how Instagram works, but I will figure it out and I'll post some kind of poll so that you can make suggestions here. With that, thanks. We'll talk to you next week.